It's hard to believe that we have come from the days of Jim Carrey on In Living Color doing this.
Well, I was stabbed in the butt, but it was a toilet paper cut. Yow!
To Jim Carrey doing this.
And then we make one of two decisions. We either decide to go through the gate of resentment, which leads to vengeance, which leads to self-harm, which leads to harm to others, or we go through the gate of forgiveness, which leads to grace. Just as Christ did on the cross. He suffered terribly.
It may be hard to take Jim seriously because of how much of a goof he has been in every single movie that he's ever been in, and then to hear him say stuff like this. And I, as a Christian, by the way, will just go as far as to tell you that I think it's great and it's noble, but it's not really quite there in terms of actually preaching Christ and preaching the gospel. But it's a noble attempt. I'll give him that. But there are some of you who may think to yourself, well, why should we even take Jim Carrey seriously? Now, that's a formidable question. It's a good question. I, on the past in the show, have kind of critiqued the way in which Christians jump on the bandwagon of celebrities, maybe even Shia LaBeouf, but more importantly, people like Justin Bieber, who don't really seem to have a really good center and were associating himself with Christians that were questionable, to say the least. But nonetheless, the only thing we can do is judge the individuals' sincerity and what they are saying based upon the merit of what's being said. So when a person like Dwight from The Office comes along and shares with us a profound message, I know it may be hard to hear what they have to say, but it's important that we listen because the message itself is important. Now, before I show you what Rainn Wilson said, I want to make sure to make mention of something C.S. Lewis said. He said that bulverism was essentially the tactic of those who wish to sidestep an argument and rather deal with the facts of the argument, want to deal with the speaker or want to deal with irrelevant information to the argument so that they don't have to deal with the information at hand. So bulverism typically takes place in the form of a personal attack against a person. So for me, very often that would look like, oh, you're a Christian and you want to talk to us about rational, logical knowledge and you want to talk to us about truth? Ha! You're a Christian. How can we believe that anything you say is true? You guys believe in things like the virgin birth and the resurrection of a dead man. That kind of stuff totally is an attempt to sidestep the historical information of the resurrection, to sidestep the virgin birth, to sidestep the internal evidence of the scripture and all of that stuff, because they wish to take a rather anti-intellectual approach to things and just rather ad hominem attack. So bulverism operates the same way. And I want to encourage you towards this before I show you Rainn Wilson, because I know you're going to look at him. I know you're going to have a picture of a guy that is maybe using a flame torch on a doorknob and doing fire drills and all sorts of other things. Maybe you're going to think about turnips. But I encourage you, go beyond The Office and hear this profound statement by Rainn Wilson as he tells us how success was not as fulfilling as it was promised it would be in his personal life. Check it out.
16-year-old Rainn Wilson, like, what's your dream? Live in New York City, be paid to be an actor, collaborate artistically with really cool people. I mean, I was living my dream and I was miserable. That started a long, slow process of me reinvestigating faith, God, and religion. And I just started at ground one, like, is there a God? The reason why spirituality is important is because it is reality. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Who I am and what I am is not my body. It's not even my personality. It's not even the trauma I suffered. It's not what I've been through. There is a little spark of the divine inside of me that is reflecting the majesty of the divine, of God, the divine presence, the creative force. That is reality. So for me to deny my reality is not beneficial to anyone, at least not myself.
Now, I'll admit, a little new agey, verging on that. We'd have to have a conversation to go a little bit deeper in what he actually thinks, but nonetheless profound. In an age of incredible materialism, he's telling us that none of the success that he experienced while he was on The Office, one of the most I won't say profound, but one of the most prolific and most popular shows, not only of its time, but probably in the history of television. I mean, the guy was everywhere, was popular, was making tons of money, and it didn't fulfill him at all. And one of the reasons he goes into such great detail here is that you cannot treat yourself as just a body. Again, in this age of materialism, where we do not recognize and acknowledge the existence of the soul, how profound and how important and how shocking to hear from a Hollywood elite that he was actually willing to acknowledge the fact that, hey, there may be the existence of a soul. There may be a non-materialistic side of reality that we need to acknowledge. That might lead us to some spiritual truths that could truly awaken us to what life is really all about. Maybe, surprise, when we give people the suicidal proposition that you don't have a soul and all you are is your body and all you can ever hope for is materialism and likes on social media, perhaps that very suicidal proposition is the reason that people despair of life anymore. Is that we are no longer answering the existential questions of our age, but we are just shoving Netflix and a phone in front of people's face and hoping that that will pacify them. Well, it will never work. So it's good to hear from somebody who earned the right to share this information, because most people are never going to be as famous as Rainn Wilson. But thankfully, he shares with us that fame isn't it. It's not all it's cracked up to be. All the money and all the fame really couldn't provide the ache, the cure for the ache in the human soul. So yeah, maybe we're actually, I know I spent a lot of time at the front talking about how just because he's Dwight, don't let that fool you. But maybe we're more inclined to hear him because he is a star. Maybe we shouldn't be, but maybe we are. Nonetheless, we should be more inclined to hear him because what he is saying is true. And we have a generation of people who are starved for truth, and they want to take it wherever they can get it. And this sows into a much broader critique that I have of the modern day church. Why are so many people leaving the church? According to NPR, America's Christian majority is on track to end. A study found that Christians accounted for about 90% of the population 50 years ago, but as of 2020, that figure has slumped to about 64%. If recent trends in switching hold, we project that Christians could make up about 35% to 46% of the U.S. population in 2070. Now, why are those figures taking place? A lot of people will say, well, the reason people are leaving the church is because people have realized that God doesn't exist. Really? Is that why? Yes, the Enlightenment taught us that God doesn't exist. Now we all know that science exists, God doesn't exist. Really? So the Enlightenment proved that God does not exist. Good luck with that one. Okay, so that's one of the most flimsy arguments that I've heard because, of course, the Enlightenment provided zero evidence that God does not exist. However, the more common argument for why people are leaving the church that I hear all the time, which, of course, is totally arbitrary and not founded on fact, is this. The reason people are leaving the church is because of Christians in church. People may like church, but it's just because Christians in the church that people don't want to go to church. And perhaps this is kind of like the second one, because all Christians ever talk about is they just want to talk about money. Well, that's funny because as I look at Walmart on an average day, the people at Walmart aren't really that interested in customer service, so they're not really that welcoming at Walmart. And by the way, they are only concerned with your money. So why do people still go to Walmart, and why are people leaving the church? Well, here's why. People are willing to put up with the rude customer service and willing to put up with the greed of Walmart because Walmart offers a service to them that they need. And this is the point. Churches all over America today have taken on the seeker-sensitive model of doing church rather than understanding that regardless of what model you have in your church, what you need to do is you need to speak to the needs of people, especially in a society in decline that are hungry and searching for truth. See, all of that stuff at Walmart can be overlooked because they are giving something to people. And what the church should be giving to people is we should be answering deep existential questions, but by and large, we've given up on that and instead tried to find Instagram influencers to fill that void. But the church should be answering questions like, does God exist? If so, how do I know? Why do I need God? How come evil and God can exist on the same planet if God truly is all loving and all good and all powerful? Did science really disprove the existence of God? Can science and theism coexist? In fact, How is it possible to believe that you don't really have science without the belief in a creator that creates the laws of nature? All of these questions and more could be answered by pastors in the pulpit, but by and large, they aren't. And this is why people are leaving the Christian church. Because we've given up, by and large, in many pulpits around America, on answering existential questions, the questions of the soul, the questions that we ask each and every day of our life. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why do I exist? When we start answering that, people will return to the church. If we get back to that, more people will get back to church. But the further we get away from truly answering the deep questions of the soul, the less need people have for church. So, even if we have to take a page from the book of Rainn Wilson and The Office to actually get back to answering the questions of the soul to a world in need, so be it. Because it's high time we started responding to the death of God movement and started helping people recognize that it isn't God who's dead, it's our culture that's dying, and we desperately need him to resurrect it and us. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, hopefully what was talked about today helped you, and you'll go with God. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.